The presidents you see on the news don't govern the world. They are the screen. Behind them exists an architecture of power so ancient, so precise, and so invisible that most people die without ever having seen it whole. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are data points, and they come with sources. In 2011, researchers at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, ETH Zürich, analyzed 43,000 transnational corporations using mathematical network models. The results were published in the scientific journal PLOS ONE. They found that 147 corporations controlled 40% of global corporate wealth. And within that group, a core of just 50 entities controlled 40% of that 40%. The same financial institutions appeared at the central nodes again and again. Barclays, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs. This is not a list of companies. It is a map of control. Now bring it down to the human level. In 2023, Oxfam published its report, Survival of the Richest. The data: the wealthiest 1% of the planet owns more wealth than the remaining 99% combined. In the period 2020 to 2022, during the pandemic, the world's 10 richest men doubled their fortunes, from $700 billion to $1.5 trillion, while 99% of humanity lost real income. Oxfam calculates that a new billionaire is minted every 30 hours. A person falls into extreme poverty every 4 seconds. How does that mechanism work? Who operates it? When was it designed? You are looking at a pyramid, but they have always shown it to you from the sides, never from above. At the base, workers, consumers, taxpayers, the level that funds everything and decides nothing. Above them, corporations, media companies, political parties, the visible interface of the system. Above those, supranational institutions, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, bodies you never elected, but which dictate the conditions of life in your country. And above all of that, invisible in any official org chart, the families, the dynastic networks that control capital, central banks, and the media that decides what counts as acceptable truth. The concentration of wealth in the United States illustrates the architecture precisely. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York reported in 2019 that the wealthiest 10% of Americans own 84% of all stocks and mutual funds in the country. The share held by the bottom 50%, less than 1%. The system does not fail. It performs exactly as designed. Latin America replicates the model at national scale. In Mexico, a country of 130 million people, 14 families, among them Slim, Larea, Salinas Pliego, Bayer, control approximately 9% of the national GDP, according to data from the Mexican Institute for Competitiveness published in 2022. 14 surnames move the real economy of an entire nation, and those interests are not isolated. Their holdings in telecommunications and mining are interlocked with the investment mandates of the global asset managers that sit above them in the network. That pattern is not a Mexican anomaly. It is the global standard. That system has new operators at the apex. The Zurich study identified the central nodes in 2011, but the corporate control map has been redrawn. Today, 3 asset managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, are the leading shareholders of 88% of S&P 500 companies simultaneously. They are not merely a node in the network. In many respects, they are the network. Collectively, they manage more than $20 trillion in assets, more than the combined GDP of the United States and China. The Pandora Papers of 2021, the largest financial document leak in history, more than 11.9 million files, revealed how the architects of this system use offshore structures to operate above the regulatory frameworks of any single nation. Now, the question no school ever asks you: who designed that system? At what historical moment were those decisions made? Which specific families sat at that table? This series will answer those questions, not with opinions. With declassified documents, public records, ownership registries, international agency reports, and data you can verify yourself tonight. In the coming episodes, you will meet the architects by name. You will see how they financed wars on both sides of the same conflict, how they created the banking system that makes permanent national debt not just possible, but structurally necessary, how they redesigned medicine, university curricula, and the foreign policy of half the planet. The pattern is consistent, the timeline is traceable, and the names are documented. By the end of this season, you will have something most people never obtain: the complete map. The question you should be asking yourself right now is this: if the system consistently and predictably produces misery for 99% of people across decades, across every continent, at what point does it stop being a failure and become a feature? The answer begins in the 18th century with a family in Frankfurt. 5 sons, a generational plan built across borders before borders as we know them existed, and a phrase one of them said that history nearly forgot: "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." Mayer Amschel Rothschild, 1744. The architecture begins in the next episode.